Hey, you guys, welcome back, you beautiful souls. I'm so glad you're here. Every week, look at you, every week looking for ways to grow and looking for ways to evolve and do what you do better, faster, easier. I'm excited that you're here and just welcome you back every time. And what we're talking about is this Mojo Moves series. It's a series of topics that I've put together that I believe will help you to create a shift in your life and in your business. I think some of these ideas are very simple, and some of the moves might even be small, but they are mighty and they should lead to major momentum in your life and your business. And today's Mojo Move is one that's so crucial, yet I think a lot of entrepreneurs resist it. And it's the sense that you have permission to change. You have permission to pivot. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to grow. You're allowed to evolve. And today we're going to talk about why pivoting is not a failure, but it's actually a strategy for success. I think that there are people around you who will feel your change. They will feel you making changes around you and might even be confused. But this is about you and your journey, and it's about you looking at the fact that your ability to adapt and be flexible is a huge asset to you in business and personally too. I think pivoting allows for flexibility and the adaptability to adjust to new things, to adjust to new information, emerging trends, changing client needs, or meeting the demands of a changing and shifting market. I think our ability to be adaptable and flexible prevents us from getting stagnant and will ensure our continued relevance in the business world. And I think it's also about us being comfortable knowing that we're going to learn from our mistakes. A pivot can be a valuable learning opportunity, and it will help us take information from what we've experienced and make those shifts and changes, and it will help us to develop future strategy. I also know that I know this from personal experience, it will help us to embrace new opportunities. I think pivoting opens doors to just new markets, new technology, new approaches, things that we just couldn't have considered before. If we don't change, then we're essentially staying the same. And I truly think if we stay the same, we're slowly dying. And so it's about staying relevant. It's about knowing that as we shift and change and pivot, we are always evolving and we are allowing ourselves to take advantage of the very things that will help us to succeed. And think about the companies in our history that did not embrace change and did not step forward into adaptation. Blockbuster comes to mind as one of those companies that just refused to change their platform, even though there was so much evidence to show them otherwise. And other companies were able to come in, like Netflix, and they were able to successfully pivot and adapt to the changing media consumption habits of their clients. And the rest is history. So I think it's important for us to have this conversation for sure. And listen, I also realize too, there are many people listening who might be a little slower at change, may even resist change. And I want to say that while I recognize that, I hope that by the end of this conversation, I can encourage you to really examine what that resistance to change has either stopped you from connecting with or what it's holding you back from really learning. Because we have to just get real about that. And we have to ask ourselves some questions around it. Like, why do we fear change so much? And I think it's because a lot of times we fear the unknown. And I totally can understand this. I also think sometimes people are resistant to change because they might fear a little judgment. What will people think if I shift directions? If all this time I've been saying I wanted to accomplish X, Y, and Z, and now I'm saying I'm going after something else, what will people think? I also wonder if sometimes the resistance to change is just feeling like you might lose a little piece of your identity in the process because people have come to know you for something or they've known your business for something and they may be a little bit confused at first. But the truth is, growth is essential and growth demands pivots. I think the whole world around us is always growing and evolving. Trees shed their leaves, rivers change course, even brands and leaders evolve over time. So staying stuck out of fear is not really going to honor your vision. I think it will honestly suffocate it. So here are some signs that it might be time to pivot. And these are just some honest questions to ask yourself. It might be time for a pivot or a shift if you feel a constant sense of friction or frustration in your own strategic plan. If the things that used to work no longer work, then we all know the definition of insanity. So it might be time for a change. It might be time to pivot and shift into some new strategies, into some new ideas, different concepts, a refresh on the technology that you're using. If what once excited you now drains you, that might be a sign that it's time to pivot. If you have new skills, passions, or opportunities you just can't ignore, and you just want to be able to put them to use, figure that out. It might be time for a pivot. If you're holding on to something just because of the time or the energy or money that you might have already invested into it, listen, I get it, but yet it probably was a great investment of your time, energy, or money because it brought you to this moment. So nothing has been lost. It actually paved the road for you to be at this place where you can think of new, innovative things. It's all good. And remember, pivoting doesn't mean that everything was wrong and you're just tossing it all aside. It just means that you're ready for the next evolution. And it's just a rejuvenation of where you are currently. And we've seen that in business, we've seen that in branding. And I think we've all had those moments where we stood at the precipice of change and we hesitated, we were feeling anxious or fearful. But yet, if you look back on that now, you might acknowledge that it was the most powerful decision you ever could have made. For me personally, I can look at that, and there's many of those pivotal moments. I was given an opportunity 13 years ago to join Keller Williams, and I took some time to really consider that. I was in my own coaching business at the time, and that was really starting to get some momentum and have some traction. And there were people around me when I talked about my consideration of becoming the CEO of a Keller Williams franchise. There were some people who really questioned that and said, but you just started your own business. Why would you go back to work for someone else? Or whatever their thoughts or concerns were at the time. And I just knew I had to explore this as a possibility for myself. And I knew all the reasons why it made sense. So even though it was a little scary, I look back at that decision now and I realize how powerful that was and how much my life has changed and evolved because of it. And if I had not made that choice, my life would be in a very different place right now. So I think that we can all look back and realize that there were times when we were at a fork in the road, and that when we chose to make that shift or we chose to take on some change, that we were better for it. If you are really tracking with me on this, I want to also give you a couple of things to consider. If you think that a change or a pivot is here for you, it's inevitable, then I want to give you a few things to help you do it with power and grace. Number one, you have to just listen to the inner nudge. If there is that little voice inside telling you that you should take advantage of that opportunity and go for it, if there's something telling you that it might be time to shift gears somehow or go back to the drawing board on a few of your ideas or goals, then pay attention to that. Pay attention to those persistent feelings that are nudging at you, even if they don't make sense yet. I believe you have those feelings for a reason. So you can't just push them down. You must pay attention and give yourself the opportunity to explore that. The second way that you can pivot with some power and grace is to just keep getting clearer and clearer. Clarify the vision. Just ask yourself a lot of questions. Don't take anything at surface value. Don't take anything for granted either. So just keep asking yourself good questions, right? So if you feel that nudge, ask yourself, what am I being pulled toward? What is this really about? examine your own feelings around it. If you can also get clear about what it might mean in terms of movement away from something. Sometimes what is pulling us forward is also an opportunity to shed some old things. And so just clarify the vision each time with these powerful questions so that you can really operate from a point of clarity, which you know is power. Then the third way that you can pivot with some power and grace is to just give yourself permission and know that you don't need anyone else's outside validation. You certainly can take advantage of people's knowledge, their resources. You might want to reach out and talk to a mentor, get some coaching or counseling. But at the end of the day, I just want to say it's about you and what you want for your business and or your life. Your intuition is valid. Your gut will give you the direction you need to move in if you are willing to trust yourself. So I think it's important that you give yourself permission to move in the direction of the nudging. Whatever it is that you're feeling, I think you're feeling it for a reason. And so, number four, it's okay though to start small. You don't have to blow up your whole life or your whole business overnight. And I've taught myself this over the years because I can be by nature a very impetuous person. I'm not afraid of change, I'm not afraid of risk. And so I've had to rein myself in at times and remind myself, okay, I can start small. I can do this one step at a time. I could test some things out. I could work on some things in a smaller way so that it gives me an opportunity to tweak it, to perfect it along the way. And that transitioning happens in stages. So it's really important that you also allow yourself to start small and take one step at a time. And then the fifth and final thing I have for you around pivoting and how to do that with power and grace is to communicate authentically. So, if you are moving in a different direction, just be able to share that in a clear way that is authentic so that clients and followers or collaborators can stay involved with you. And look, just be honest about what your thoughts have been around this change, share your growth story, help someone understand all the small steps that you're taking and will continue to take for this transition so that you can share and be honest about the reasons why you're making these changes or pivoting because people will work with you and walk the journey with you. And who doesn't love someone who's real about it? Who doesn't love authenticity? So I think that it is natural to want to change and evolve. And so when you find yourself in that process, just communicate it authentically. That would be my fifth way that I want to share with you about how you can pivot with power and grace. So I know some of you might be listening in the car. If you're anything like me, you probably listen to most of your podcasts in the car. But I will give you a very mini reflection exercise. And we'll put this in the show notes so you can go back to it because I do want you to be able to take a little time to really think about these questions and really journal on it and give yourself an opportunity to download some information. Here we go. Here are the questions. Number one, where in your life or business do you feel the tug to pivot right now? Like, where are you feeling that little sense of something might need to change? And so I want you to be able to grab a journal and write down some thoughts around that. The second question I want you to ask yourself is what would it look like to honor that nudge? How would things start to develop in your life? What would your life look like if you started moving in the direction of the nudge? The third question you can ask yourself and take some time to journal on is what fear comes up when you imagine shifting? What fear comes up when you imagine shifting? And look, be honest, because I'm sure there will be some fears, even those of us who really are comfortable with change or crave change. There's always something that creeps up because we're moving away from what we know to be the norm. And so sometimes, the idea of moving into something unknown can cause a little bit of anxiety or fear. So just be honest about that. What fear comes up when you imagine shifting? And then this is really important. What truth can you tell yourself instead? Because most of the time, our fear isn't really valid. So I'm sure you've heard this before, right? What does fear stand for? False evidence appearing real. Most of the time that we are focused on fearing the future, we are creating a lot of energy and anxiety around things that haven't happened yet. And we start to think the worst for some reason. And so we have to realize that a lot of the time, what we're thinking about in terms of fear isn't even that possible. It may never happen. So, if you could get honest about the truth behind it, really, and stop focusing on the fear, would that help you start thinking again clearer and more strategically? Because now your next level is always waiting for you on the other side of fear. Your next level, your next big opportunity is just standing on the other side of your willingness to evolve. I think you have to understand you have the power. You have the power and you have the choice to change whenever you feel you want to. You don't need someone's permission. Yes, you can think it through, but at the end of the day, if you're getting that feeling like something's not working, I'm sure there's a reason for it. And so you want to honor the feelings and you want to explore your options around it. And I think that when we do, we find that we can really see change, evolution, and transition as the result of it, which means that we find ourselves in a whole new space, which can be very life changing, very exciting, very fulfilling. And you just don't know what's possible unless you give it a try. So, your Mojo Move challenge this week, identify one area where you're feeling called to pivot. It might be big, but it can be small. It might be in your business, it could be in your personal life. Identify one area where you're feeling called to pivot or change. Then ask yourself some of the questions I just shared with you. But most importantly, take one micro action. Remember, you don't have to blow up your whole life, but just take one small step toward the pivot. Your one small step could be to make a decision. It could be to have a conversation with someone. It could be for you to explore or research more. It could be to establish a boundary. Whatever small step it is, it will start momentum for you. And momentum will lead to more brave steps. So nothing changes unless something changes. And so we can't just think our way to different, we have to take action. So that's your third part of the action step this week is that you have to take action towards the pivot. Whew. Thank you for being here with me and spending time with me again. I trust that you leave this episode feeling empowered to explore, to want to examine some of your feelings, and for you to just trust the process of evolution, for you to know that you're not stuck. You are allowed to grow, you are allowed to change, and you just need to create the steps and the plan to have that. So if you love this conversation, it would mean the world if you shared it or left a review. And come back next week for another Mojo Move. We're doing this all month. We're going to be talking about these small but powerful ways to fuel your journey and help you really live a life by design. So until then,